Hello, this is Orlando Mayor Buddy Dyer.
Welcome home.
Soar into tower. We are ready for takeoff.
Por favor, manténganse alejado de las puertas.
Hey, it's Amy from DVC Clubhouse.
Hey Clubbers, it's Scott from DVC Clubhouse.
Hey, it's Kathleen from DVC Clubhouse.
Welcome aboard. It's Phil from DVC Clubhouse.
Hey, everyone, and welcome back to the Debrief podcast brought to you by DVC Clubhouse. This is Amy, joined by Phil, Scott, and Kathleen. Hey, guys, how are you?
Hi.
Hi guys.
Welcome aboard, guys. You notice she went in a different order this time. She keeps trying to mess with us here.
No, I'm telling you, it depends on like the order of when people log in, like where everyone appears on my screen. So I pick an order. Like, so for me, I'm saying in order of how I see you.
What I'm hearing is that she doesn't remember our names without prompting.
Look, it's confusing because Scott always puts up silly names and it throws me off a little bit. So, I have to stop and think.
Hey, at least he took off the blanket, looking like someone's Nana there on screen for a while.
It's still here. I still have it.
Keeping it just in case.
What's funny about that is that I just listened today to our episode that we recorded on how to stay cool at Disney. And apparently the Huff household is the place to hang out if it's hot.
It's a nice frigid
because
64.
Scott's freezing.
I have a Spirit jersey on and a blanket.
And I'm hot.
I thought somebody was gonna make some sort of comment there. But
I thought about it. I just couldn't decide where to go. There was so much low hanging fruit.
Yeah. So anyway, today we are going to talk about adult only trips at Disney. Those trips that you are fortunate enough to take. I mean, we're all fortunate to go to Disney at any time with any people, but it's really nice sometimes to be able to go on an adult's trip, either with friends or as a couple or alone, to be able to do things without the kids and not have to cater to the needs of young ones or teenagers who want to get their way all the time. So I'm looking forward to this conversation because much to my children's chagrin, I've been taking over like the past year, all of my trips have been by myself, where I've been hanging out with Clubhouse members, and they've all been adult only for me. So I quite enjoy my adult getaway weekends that I take.
First of all, what do you mean want to get their way all the time? My children always get their way all the time. That's why we do the occasional adults only trip.
Well, I mean, every once in a while, it's okay to tell them no.
I have yet to master that art.
No is a complete sentence.
I use that line all the time, and I will actually tell them no at home, but when we go down to Disney, I just feel like, I don't know, I like spoiling them.
Yeah, I get it. And it's fun because it's fun to see things through their eyes, but it's also fun to see things through your own eyes sometimes.
So the last time, it's funny you talked about going down by yourself. My wife, I think, actually pushes for me to go down by myself because the last time I was down there by myself, I had a brief little stopover and I walked into the Magic Kingdom and felt this overwhelming sense of guilt that I was not there with my family. I walked into the shops on Main Street, bought my wife a Dooney and Bork, and then left because I just couldn't do it. I was so overwhelmed with guilt that I was on Main Street without them that I just came home with gifts for everybody instead. So she's probably pulling for it again. She's going to end up with another Dooney.
The first time I went on an adults only trip, my kids were very young, and I did have that sense of guilt a little bit because I knew that if they'd be there, that they were young enough to kind of not really feel like they were missing out. But you look around and see all of the little kids like in their state of wonder and awe, and it makes you miss your kids. It's not as hard for me now because I've been doing it for so long, first of all. I ripped the Band-Aid off a long time ago, and by the end of that trip, I was no longer feeling guilty. I was feeling like I had made a wonderful decision and have therefore committed my life to a life of occasional adult-only trips. So Kathleen and Scott, you guys, because you only started going to Disney, especially you, Kathleen, the first time you went was in, you said what, 2020?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So you went for the first time as an adult, and was it an adult only trip then, or did you have
It
Lily
was.
with you?
It was adults only. But even when Lily's with us, it still feels like adults only because she likes to do what I like to do. She's not a, rope drop, close the park type of person. So, what do you think? Do you think that's true about her?
Yeah, I mean, she's, what, 17
Yeah.
now, so it's not like she's the typical, 6, 7, 8-year-old that is excited to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and rope drop, do everything that you possibly can do. She wants to sleep in. She wants to see some different resorts.
She wants to go to the pool.
Yeah,
She still likes to ride the rides. It's just,
she's not like hardcore. I have to go to the park all day long.
yeah. So that works for us.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and my kids are older now too, so when they are with me, we have a great time. But they also, my kids have been going since they were little, so they have the things that they have to do that they have like nostalgia about. It's a little bit different there because I think that if they had experienced it for the first time as a teenager, they would probably do it a little bit differently. But Phil, so you, up until recently, you had never really done an adults only trip, right?
Not entirely. I think our first adults only trip was 2019 marathon weekend, so it goes back a little bit. We had started experimenting with adult only time at Disney prior to that. We, for quite a few vacations in a row, used one of the offsite Disney approved babysitting services to watch the kids for a night. So we would go down for our typical long vacation. We would have the kids with us, and we would find a night that had an after hours event or something along those lines. We'd go with the kids to the park in the morning. We'd go back. We'd go to the pool, our usual afternoon things. And then we would have the babysitter come in maybe 5:30. We would turn them over to the babysitter in the room, and then we'd go into the park for the night. So we had done that a few times prior to. But the 2019 marathon was the first time we truly went down without the kids. And I think in all reality, that may have been the first trip we took without the kids since they were born. So that was a big step for us to go down there and have time by ourselves.
That was a milestone moment.
My wife jokes that I have more maternal instinct than she does. I think we leave and she is just footloose and fancy free. She's like, let's go. Let's have a good old time. She wants to have a cocktail. She wants to relax in the airport without chasing kids and not have to track down 14 coloring books and Nintendo DSs and snacks on the airplane. She just wants to kick back. And I am all but in tears when the plane lifts off. The funny thing is, I travel a lot for business, and it doesn't matter how many times I go away. I'm fine going to the airport. I'm fine getting on the plane. When we start that takeoff run on the runway, I still get teary eyed because I'm leaving my wife and my kids behind. It drives me absolutely nuts. But with that said, adult trips to Disney are a whole different world, and we really do enjoy ourselves. I feel guilty about it. I miss the kids. And the whole time we're there, I'm saying things like, oh, when we come back with the kids, we've got to do that. Or, hey, look at that. The kids would love that. But we truly do enjoy our time. And I think as that has progressed and we've met everybody in the clubhouse, become friends with you guys, we look forward to it probably more because it is an adult trip and we can do adult things together. But it's a whole different world when you're doing an adult trip and you've got other adults to hang out with, especially when Scott and I are acting like juvenile delinquents.
Yeah, I think that my journey, like my Disney World journey, because I went for the first time as a teenager and fell so in love with it and it became like an obsession or like a passion of mine to keep going back. I mean, I became an adult shortly after my first time going to Disney. And so I was taking trips as a young adult with family, pretty much like that was the beginning of my Disney World like fandom. It was like at that during that time of my life. And then I went with, my ex-husband we had to go. I needed him to come to Disney, and he proposed to me when we were there. We ended up getting married there. We bought into DVC in 2002. I was 25 years old, and then we didn't have kids. We didn't have a kid for like another 3 years. So we went every year after we became DVC members. And I think we went a couple times, a couple of the years. And so we were always like, it was so fun because we were inviting, my sister, we had friends come, and it was adult only all the time. And then we had kids, and then clearly it shifted the dynamic. But I did kind of always like yearn for that fun that I had when I was like a young adult going to Disney, because that was a ton of fun. And so it's never felt weird to me to be there as an adult without kids. And like I said, like that first time I did feel a little bit sad. I missed them, but it never really felt totally weird for me because it's kind of what I was used to. It's like what my experience had been, which was going to Disney and going to the restaurants, I fell in love with California Grill in my early 20s on adult only trips, and going to like the different lounges and drinking around the world and doing all that stuff. That was always something that was a part of my Disney fun. And when my kids also, now that they're old enough that I can be doing this without them, it's really fun. And to your point, Phil, the fact that we've now like made friends too, so that even when I go by myself, I'm never by myself.
I think that's the difference is the foundation of our experience. So going as a kid, it was always about family time and it was seeing it through a kid's eyes. And then my wife and I went once while we were dating. It was actually very early into our dating. We had gone down with another couple. This puts it in perspective. The couple we went down with, she was pregnant at the time. And that young man is now a freshman at an Ivy League university and works for me. So date myself for you. But after that, it was us with the kids. So I think all of my core memories for the most part of Disney involve either being a kid or being there with the kids. So I really acutely feel that absence when they're not there. It's a big difference. And again, we enjoy it. We love it. We're looking forward to our next adults only trip. But I'm also looking forward to the trip a month later where we go down with our kids. It's a totally different way of experiencing Disney. I don't know that one is better or worse than the other, but I think I will forever maintain that there truly is nothing like seeing Disney through your kids' eyes. Doesn't mean we don't enjoy hanging out and doing the adult stuff.
So what are the main differences then in your trips when you go with your kids versus without?
Well, I mean, number one is, as anyone can tell you, you can relax a lot more when the kids aren't there. You don't have that pressure, that constantly looking everywhere, the go, go, go. I think it starts, as I said, with just getting to the airport. When you get to the airport with kids, you've got to get all of their bags packed. You've got to make sure they've got everything. You've got to get them through security. You've got to entertain them at the gate. You've got to feed them. Do I have enough snacks for the plane? Have we packed food? You get on the plane. Where are they sitting? You've got to get their iPads out. You're not really relaxing, so to speak. When you get there, you've got to get them through the hustle and bustle. We're worried about what time do we land? What time are they going to eat? Are they going to get grumpy? Are we going to have a roller coaster of emotions? You get up in the morning and it's what are you planning for the kids? When we go as adults, everything is just laid back. If it goes sideways, it goes sideways. We're grown-ups. Who cares? If I get stuck at the airport overnight, Emily and I can go find a hotel room without any worries whatsoever. If it starts raining, we'll go find a lounge somewhere and hang out because we can do that. We don't have a plan, so to speak. Where with the kids, you've always got to be looking for that next thing you're doing, and you're always trying to anticipate where the problems are going to come up. Did they eat? Do they have enough water? Do we have the right clothes? Do we need to get back to the pool? Where when we go down as adults, I don't think we plan anything. I mean, the last time we went down, we were hanging around Epcot, and I said, let's hop on the Skyliner and just go get some coffee at Riviera. My children would just, they would lose their minds. What do you mean we're just going to go sit in the lobby at Riviera and drink a coffee for 45 minutes? And we just sat there and soaked it all up. With the kids, it's what ride are we going on next? What are we having for lunch? If I go down with Emily, maybe we don't go on rides. Maybe we do. Maybe we do three of them. Then we wander around and we look at the art and I take some pictures and maybe we go get a snack. Maybe we don't. It is laid back with a complete lack of planning and knowing that regardless of what happens, it's just okay. We'll get through it. There's going to be no meltdowns. And it just makes it easier. You can take a deep breath.
As you were saying, I was flashing back to different trips that I took with my kids and remembering one year when Emma lost a tooth on our first night and we were at the boardwalk and
They are great with kids losing teeth, aren't they? We had one lose a tooth down there as well.
yeah, so great. But I'm like laughing to myself. I'm like, yeah, when I'm going on adults only trip, I don't need to worry about somebody losing a tooth and getting a bag. And yeah, I mean, if somebody loses a tooth, it's probably for a much more dramatic reason when I'm on an adults only trip.
And the experiences are different, right? You talked about it. With the kids, you're always trying to plan your meals around where they're going to be. If we just want to go hang in the back of Morocco with the kids, that's not going to work. We had a fantastic evening with Scott and Kathleen. We just went and got sangria and sat in Morocco and looked around for a while. And then, if you want to leave there, hey, let's go just look at Swan and Dolphin. Kids would look at you. What do you mean we're just going to go look at Swan and Dolphin? We're just going to wander around. We're going to find a bench and sit somewhere. We're going to maybe not plan dinner. And if dinner happens at 10 p.m., dinner happens at 10 p.m. Big deal.
Yeah, totally. It really is. It's a different experience. And I mean, and again, your kids are younger, so you are still in that phase where there is more of a schedule and more of a routine. It's not necessarily the case with my kids, and they do have the freedom to kind of wander and do what they want when we're at Disney. But, your kids, I think no matter how old they are, they rely on you. They need something. If something happens, you are the solution finder. And it is like you can't fully exhale on vacation when your kids are with you. So I think that, for me, that's like a major difference is that I can go to bed. Well, first of all, my kids like are so annoying about sleeping in a room with other people. Like if they can hear another person breathing, like God forbid, I'm like, literally, that is how people survive is by breathing.
Not just that, how about there's not a single fight over who gets what bed that night when you're vacation? Like I'm with Emily, guess what? That's the bed we're using. It's that
Right.
simple. With the kids, who's getting the pullout versus who's getting the queen size? Who's in, if you're at Old Key West, who gets the couch versus who gets the chair? And the room is much cleaner at the end of 5 days. Have you ever noticed that? You're not
Oh
constantly
my
cleaning
gosh.
nonstop when you don't have the kids with you?
Wait, I think that the TikTok video that one of my kids' friends made is like a thing of legend in my family because it seriously looked like our resort studio at the Grand Floridian had been like ransacked.
It looked like a giant came along, wrapped its hands around the studio, shook it
And
up and
yes.
down nonstop, and then set it back in place.
And when I'm there by myself, it almost looks like nobody was ever even in the room. I mean, I'm there. There's like 8 Q-tips in the garbage, maybe like 4 makeup wipes and 1 dirty cup. Like that's it. I often leave and feel like the people that housekeeping must come in and be like, was anybody actually even here? So that's a huge difference. But like in terms of the things to do on, when you're there as an adult, Kathleen and Scott, you are clearly you live there. You're most of the time you're there just the two of you. So like what do you feel like if you were talking to somebody who was going on an adult only trip, like what would your advice be to them?
Um, hmm. Well, I would say just do whatever you want to do. A lot of it, like what Phil said, was just a lot of planning. There's a lot of worrying about what's next, what time you have to do this, making sure everybody has what they need. But yeah, I would just say don't worry about anything and just kind of go with the flow, and whatever happens, happens, because there's always something to do. And if you just want to sit back, like Phil said, and sit in the lobby for 45 minutes and relax, there's nothing wrong with that.
I mean, we go up and we never have a plan.
No, that's why
Rarely.
I'm struggling so bad with this, because I can't even remember what it's like to go with young kids, because I'm so used to just going up there now. We don't have a plan. And I think that's probably the most fun is just whatever happens, happens.
Well, you used to go with young kids.
Yes, that's what I mean, like many, many years ago. And I can remember being, the very structured spreadsheet. This time we're going to be doing this. This time we have to go do this. We had the dining plan, we had the fast passes, everything was mapped out. And of course, the kids always dictate what the trip is going to be. So, what restaurants they want to go do, what rides are the most important, what park, what day. But yeah, as an adult, you're just basically like, screw it. Like, I'm just going to go up and do whatever I want to do. Now, we do occasionally sit back and say, okay, well, we haven't rode Haunted Mansion in a while, so it would be nice to go and plan that.
Yeah.
But we also do that. And then the rest of the day for 4 hours at Magic Kingdom, we just do whatever we want to do. And that's the nice part of just having, you don't have the responsibility of trying to make sure everybody's okay, making sure they have what they need, and making sure they're entertained.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the key. I talk about having a plan, and I've mentioned it on this show before. I do every trip with a plan in place, but I am fully expecting at some point to have to just set that plan on fire because it didn't work, and we're going to wing it. And my kids are very capable of doing that. They're great travelers. They've been to Disney a lot. But truly, the key is you don't, and I think I used this word earlier, you don't have to anticipate where we are going to be in an hour. Where are we going to be in 2 hours? Not just physically, as in where are we going to be in the park or what ride are we going to be doing? Are we going to need to get some food into them? Are we going to need to anticipate getting too hot? Are we going to anticipate needing pool time down the line? What time will we have to feed them dinner in order to get to the fireworks because we have to get the right spot? What about tomorrow? Are we going to have to be back in the room by 8 o'clock tonight in order for them to be ready for tomorrow because we have something coming up in the morning? The beauty of being an adult is if you don't eat till 10 o'clock, you don't eat till 10 o'clock. If you get hungry, you go and find somewhere to eat. You don't have to think about, well, if we go to restaurant A, he's not going to like something. If we go to B, she's not going to like something. We just find something and we eat it. It is the complete lack of needing to plan just an hour or two into the day, every hour of the day, that makes it such a relaxing trip.
I think that we're talking a lot about the perspective of people who go a lot. So we don't feel the need to be planning because we can kind of take it as it comes. But I have gone on adult only trips with friends and family before who don't go as frequently, which definitely does change the dynamic a little bit because they might be people who have never been before or who don't go as frequently or haven't been in a long time. And so I think that those trips are kind of a little bit of a combination of both, where anytime you're going to set foot on Disney property and decide that you're going to go into a theme park, there is a certain amount of planning that has to take place in order for you to be able to accomplish your objectives. It's kind of like a nice balance between saying, okay, well, we'll get the lightning lane or we won't get the lightning lane. We'll make this reservation at, this restaurant, but it's the lack of urgency around the rest of the things in between the planned things. And really the flexibility to change without worrying about somebody, being upset. But I've had so many fun trips where I would say probably and unsurprisingly on my adult only trips, I mostly end up going to Epcot. There's very little visiting the other theme parks. Maybe we might go to, depending on who I'm with, we might go to Animal Kingdom because we love Nomad Lounge, but we're going there for the lounge, not for any of the rides. And if while we're there, we see, oh, the safari is only a 35-minute wait, we should hop over there, we'll ride it. Or if they, because they're setting foot on Disney property and they have to see the castle, we might, pop in and make that a part of our day. But for the most part, my adult only trips, especially because the majority of the people that I go with who are not, recently now like Clubhouse members who have annual passes, most of the people, when I go on adult only trips with friends or family, they don't have they don't have annual passes. So it's like we need to pick one park that we're going to focus on. And it's always Epcot, right? Because, we like to wander around World Showcase, watch the entertainment, grab some cocktails and snacks as we wander, and take in some of the shows. I just think that Epcot overall lends itself more to the ability for adults to kind of sit back and relax. Although I will say that Animal Kingdom has like moved up for me, because there are so many things that I enjoy doing there that are like, you can really relax and like chill out there. So, I think that really like the hallmark of any adult trip is probably going to Epcot. Going to Epcot and then picking, the restaurants and the lounges that you want to go to, and also the nightlife, because when you go with kids, you're not looking for things to do at nighttime. You're looking to get your kids to bed so that you can be up early the next day. When you're there on an adults only trip, you can sleep in a little bit, so you're not worried about going to bed late and doing something fun. So I've said it before, but I'm a huge Jelly Rolls fan. So when I am there and not needing to be waking up at 6 o'clock in the morning so that I can be showered and ready to reserve Genie Plus and be out the door by 7:30, I'm going to go to Jelly Rolls and often stay there until it closes at 1:30 in the morning, and then go home and sleep until 10 in the morning if I can. I mean, I'm getting older now, so sleep can be a little bit harder to come by even when you go to bed late, but nightlife becomes something that is a part of a trip that is never really something that you consider when you're traveling with your kids.
I think you brought up a couple of good points there. And if I were talking to somebody who was not, let's say, a DVC member or a frequent visitor or did not have an annual pass, and they asked me for some tips and tricks or some suggestions for going, I would say number one, people fail to recognize how good some of the dining is on property. Do not limit yourself to just the quick service or the popular restaurants that you see on Facebook. Really branch out, do some research. There is some phenomenal dining on property. And we're not even talking about the Michelin starred restaurant or Victorian Alberts or, Hollywood Brown Derby. There's some fantastic, fantastic meals on property. Take your time and explore those. Number two, and Scott and Kathleen, I'm sure, will agree with this one, enjoy the resorts. You are not limited to just the parks. These resorts are beautifully themed. They have amazing lounges. They have probably the best dining on property for the most part can be found in the resorts. Don't limit yourself to just the parks. I think you're absolutely right when it comes to Epcot. We will, when we're down there by ourselves, go into Magic Kingdom briefly, just because I feel like you need to see Magic Kingdom when you're there. There's just something about being the kid inside that walks down Main Street. Animal Kingdom suddenly goes up on my list, and we know how I typically feel about Animal Kingdom. But without kids, that park becomes very doable because you can get in and get out. You can enjoy the lounges and you can take Uber or Lyft. So you're not limited to the bus rides back and forth or that walk back to the bus. And probably the biggest tip I could give is just stop. Don't put yourself on a forced march going through the parks or through the resorts. Just take a break. Sit on the beach at Beach Club and look across at Boardwalk. Grab one of those benches at Boardwalk, get yourself an ice cream, and just watch people walking by. Find a bench in the park and just people watch for a while. Take in the ambiance. It's a theme park, not an amusement park. Take the time to soak that up and enjoy your surroundings. And as far as Epcot, really take your time going through the countries. With kids, they get bored about halfway through, and you find yourself going from country to country to country. Really take the time to explore and appreciate all of the effort that went into each of those individual countries and what they have to offer, from the shops to the dining to the shows. There's a lot there that people miss because they're just pushing through it to get to the next thing and the next thing. Take some time in the moment to enjoy this thing.
Having gotten married at Disney World, we had about 60 guests come, and the majority of them were adults. And it was really fun to kind of be the person that would direct people and kind of just give them some ideas of things to do. But it was also really fun to see how each different person decided to spend their time. There were people who, you had the people who, even as adults, were like the thrill seekers, like they wanted to ride the rides. And so they were able to do that. You had the people who were just fell in love with World Showcase and were just spending the times in the countries. And then you just had some of them who didn't even go into the parks. They just stayed at the pool and hung out at the resort and relaxed. But I think that is something that is a great point that you made, Phil, where I think that when you're talking to people who are going as adults, to just kind of really like give them an overview of what Disney World really is and to set their expectations about all of the things that you can do. And I've mentioned it before, like I'm very intentional about the types of trips that I do when I go. And I think that it's, your average human being is not aware of all of the ins and outs and all of the things that you can do at Disney World. And so I think that, Disney Springs is a place where so many people really don't even head, especially if you're there with your kids. You might not go to Disney Springs. And if you do, it might be like you're going to go to T-Rex or you're going to go to Raglan Road and see the step dancers and then pop into World of Disney to shop and then head back, to a park or to your resort. But I have really found Disney Springs to be enjoyable as an adult, meeting up with friends. We had so much fun our first Clubhouse weekend where we kind of did our little crawl through Disney Springs. It's fun at nighttime. It's not as hot. And it's just like it's like a really fun vibe. It has great restaurants. It has great bars. There's live entertainment everywhere, which is just, if you're looking for just a fun, relaxing vacation, you can actually have a fun, relaxing vacation at Disney World as an adult when you're there without kids by just going and taking in the entertainment and, seeing Cirque du Soleil, going to Wine Bar George and being able to sit and have a meal at a place that you wouldn't necessarily go if you had small kids. Or, doing one of the tours, like doing that Wild Africa trek was so fun. What is happening?
Parker is snoring in the background.
Oh, why can I never hear Parker's
I didn't
sound
even hear
effects?
that.
Parker, you gotta wake up.
I think that Phil must have like the highest quality headphones ever because he picks up every single noise.
I'm an AV geek. My equipment is
I didn't even
nicer
hear
than
that.
typical.
I can barely
Sorry.
even hear myself, but
Oh, don't be sorry. We
you're
love
hearing the
Parker.
snoring.
She's,
So, I mean, Parker inevitably makes an appearance on the podcast. So honestly, maybe we need to add Parker into the intro. A little bark.
She has to be everywhere we are. So, but like what you were saying about Disney Springs, Scott and I just did this the other day. We like to go there and hop to different places to get appetizers. So instead of sitting down and eating one big meal, we like to go multiple places and share apps because there's so many good places to go.
Yeah, I did that on one of my solo trips. Before it was one of my solo trips before we all. I mean, it was before you guys lived there, and it was before I think before Clubhouse got started, and I was and I was pretty much by myself for the majority of that trip. But that's what I did. I kind of treated Disney Springs like I treat World Showcase, and I went to Wine Bar George and I got the fried mozzarella. I mean, the fried mac and cheese balls. I got the ribs from Morimoto Asia. I went to Homecoming and got the thigh high chicken biscuits and just got some drinks along the way, sat and watched like the violinist play. Like it was just a really, really fun, relaxing, very much like being at World Showcase, but just doing it at Disney Springs. And that was a really fun day and something that you wouldn't do if you were there with kids probably. So Disney Springs, I think, has a lot to offer on an adults only trip.
Oh yeah, Lily, as much as she likes to do the same things, she wouldn't like to do that.
I was just gonna say, can you imagine telling any kid at all we're
No.
gonna spend half a day at Disney Springs?
I don't even think Lily really enjoys Disney Springs that much. Like she'll go for a little bit and then she's ready.
I think that used to be like when I had younger kids, we would just go on check-in day, like just hang out for a little bit and wait for the room to be ready, and that was it. I didn't see Disney Springs the rest of the trip.
Yeah, aside from the Lego store, there's not a lot for my kids there.
Right.
The same thing with Allie and Emma right now as teenagers. They'll go if we have a reservation someplace to eat, but once we're done eating, they might want to pop into Sephora or someplace. But at that point, I'm like, these are stores that are at our local mall. We don't need to be spending our time going into stores that we can go to 20 minutes from our house. So that's not what I want to do. I want to be able to sit and watch the live entertainment and, just take in the sights and sounds of Disney Springs.
I will say though, you just said entertainment and Disney Springs. Well, the new drone show is kind of a game changer as far as taking kids late at night, because I think that's something that a lot of kids would definitely want to see.
Agreed. It looks amazing. I am very purposely not watching full videos of that. And I will very purposely, as Amy has pointed out on the page, not look
Mhm.
at full videos of Tiana. I want to experience it. I think one point I wanted to make, just like I am not an enormous fan of Animal Kingdom, I like it. It's not the top park for me. I am also not an enormous fan of Saratoga. It is one of the last resorts we have not stayed at because it just doesn't do anything for me because of how we vacation. But just like Animal Kingdom rises on my list for an adults only trip, suddenly Saratoga becomes a contender because now you have that easy access to Disney Springs. And again, especially being adults, I don't need to worry about how many steps those little legs have to put in. It becomes a very relaxing endeavor to walk from Saratoga over to Disney Springs, slowly wind your way through there. My wife can have a drink, we can have apps, we can maybe shop a little bit just to look at things, and then very slowly, casually, peacefully make our way back to Saratoga and our room. As an adult, that's an enjoyable evening. With little kids, that's not going to happen. So all of a sudden, Saratoga goes from the bottom of my list to much closer toward the top. I still wouldn't put it at the top of my list, but it is suddenly in contention for a viable resort when we're going adults only.
Well, I can absolutely, like, as somebody who has gone through the evolution of different Disney phases in my life, staying at Saratoga Springs when I had small kids, that was the resort that we stayed at when we couldn't get a reservation anywhere else because we decided after the 7-month mark, that we were going to go. And it definitely not the top of my list. I have stayed there so much more frequently in the past couple of years when I've been taking my solo trips for that very reason, because it actually is like a really beautiful resort when you walk the grounds, and the proximity to Disney Springs is really nice. I mean, on that trip that I described earlier where I had like I kind of ate around Disney Springs, I was staying at Saratoga that night, and got there at 11 o'clock in the morning, and I stayed there until after dinner. And it was so nice to be able to just walk back to my room. And there's a beautiful view of sunset at Disney Springs over there and at Saratoga. And it's really pretty. And I think that also, I think that the pools there are great too for adult only trips because although they are all like pretty themed, you've got at the paddock pool, there is that snack bar. So it's really nice because that's right next to your building where you can go down and you can get coffee in the morning. You can sit because people aren't really going to the pools that early in the morning. So it's like a really nice place to just kind of like sit and relax. I just posted a poll a couple days ago about Zen resorts, and Saratoga Springs did get 3 votes because I think for people who have stayed there and people who like Saratoga, it is actually a really relaxing place to stay. There, like, although it's sprawling, there's not like a lot of hustle and bustle. So I think that's leads to like the next question for adult only stays. What is your preferred place to stay?
Grand Floridian.
I think for us, as I said, Saratoga rises in our estimation. I have said for years that you can't go wrong with a monorail resort. It doesn't matter what kind of trip you're taking. You just can't go wrong with a monorail resort. I would certainly rank Polynesian and Grand Floridian higher than Contemporary. They're just more my style. They just speak to me more. But for us, I think if you asked me right off the bat, or you asked my wife, no thought, no justification, where do you want to stay on an adults only? We're going with either Beach Club, if we're talking DVC resorts, or Boardwalk. Because again, it comes back to Epcot. We want easy access to Epcot. We want to be able to walk in and out as we see fit. So I think we're going to go with those just because they fit our vacationing style as adults much more. Now, with that said, I would still potentially pick those with kids because they give other benefits. But as an adults only, to me, it comes down to either Polynesian Grand Floridian or Beach Club Boardwalk, just because we've got easy access to do what we want. And I think Crescent Lake probably takes the championship on that one for us.
I think that actually, in a world where I typically rank Bay Lake Tower pretty low, Bay Lake Tower has risen for me when I'm on my solo trips or if I'm only traveling with one other person, especially for an adults only trip, I think, because the pool, the theming of the pool becomes a little bit less important for
I was
me
just going to say,
on
what theming? If we're talking the Bay Lake pool, what theming?
right. And that doesn't really matter because I'm really, if I'm at the pool, I'm there because like I just want to relax in the sun and close my eyes. I'm not, what I'm looking at doesn't really matter because I'm probably closing my eyes and just like zenning out. But we've talked about it before, but the view of the sunrise over Bay Lake from that building is great. And for me, again, because I'm a huge California Grill fan, being able to be in the same resort as California Grill and, Steakhouse 71 has a great lounge. I would put that above. I would choose Bay Lake Tower above Polynesian, but I think that my top would be I would pick Beach Club over Boardwalk, and I would of the monorail resorts I would pick Grand Floridian just because of the number of restaurants and Enchanted Rose. Like again, like contemporary that outer rim lounge. Like if they could build an awesome lounge in the contemporary, yeah, I think it would be a game changer for me. Yeah, I'm going either Grand Floridian or Beach Club. And I really like Wilderness Lodge. I do think that the dining is like a for an adults only trip is kind of like a weak spot, except that I love Geyser Point so much that being able to take the boat over to Contemporary gives Wilderness Lodge like it helps in the dining a little bit just because I don't need to go to Whispering Canyon Cafe or Storybook Dining when I'm by myself.
I was going to jump in and say the same because you mentioned that view over Bay Lake. And what I was going to say was I can get almost the same view from Boulder Ridge, and I like the resort better. And it's funny as I'm sitting here thinking about this, and it didn't occur to me before now. When I think about an adults only trip, first of all, the dining is not that important to me on site because I have far more flexibility with just my wife and myself to go anywhere I want for dining. I'm not as worried about it being close by because I'm not as worried about the kids melting down and having to get back somewhere quickly. But when I think about an adults only trip, my mind inevitably goes to evening walks and just taking our time. And to me, Bay Lake Tower is not conducive to that. There's not a lot of outdoor space to walk. Grand Floridian has it through the buildings and the courtyards. Polynesian to me is right up there with Wilderness Lodge for just beautiful grounds to walk through at night, especially that walk down the pathway to Boulder Ridge with the music overhead is absolutely lovely. And the walk around Crescent Lake during the evening is absolutely fantastic. But as we're sitting here talking about this, what I'm visualizing is walking around a resort to get where we want to go at night. And for that reason, I think Bay Lake Tower falls lower than Wilderness Lodge because I think there's far better ambiance at Wilderness Lodge than there is over at Contemporary.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like, and this might be a controversial statement to make on this podcast, but some listeners might appreciate it. I can see where people would really like Riviera for an adult only stay because from a theming perspective, it's low key, right? Like it kind of has like an adult vibe. And to your point of like the strolling, the ability to walk over to Caribbean Beach is a really nice option. And you've got access to the dining and the lounge, the bar over there. Plus you then have Topolino's, which people love. It's not one of my favorites. It's not in my top 5, but for an adult only experience, an adult only night out, I think that it would be great. And overall, yeah, I just think that it does have like a little bit more of a mature feel to it than some of the other resorts. So it wouldn't be in my top 3, but it would probably beat a bunch like honestly, and Phil, like you would totally disagree with this, but I would probably pick Riviera over Polynesian for an adult only stay where I'm just trying to like really if I'm not going to the parks and I'm just trying to relax, because it does give me Skyliner access to, as long as that it's up and running, to get to Epcot, to be able to, and the rooms are nice. Like those studios are nice. So I think I can see the virtue in staying there for an adult only stay. If you're looking for something that just feels like grown up or maybe like a little bit like romantic, because and that's like a different type of trip. I mean, I'm single, so I'm not looking for romance. I'm just looking for a good time.
I was going to say I'm married, so I'm not looking for romance. So you could make that argument either way. You had me right up until that final statement, and I was going to agree with you and say Riviera is still not going to fall in my top 5. It probably, for an adults only stay, wouldn't fall in my top 6 or 7, just thinking quickly. But I think you're right. It would rise in my estimation for an adults only trip because of what is there and quickly available, the feel of it. I'm not a Riviera guy, but yeah, you're right. I grossly disagree with taking Riviera over Polynesian. In my mind, it's just not even a contest, just because of what Polynesian brings to bear and everything that's around Polynesian.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think that it depends on the type of trip that I'm looking for. And I think what it comes down to is like if I was going to pick a monorail resort, I wouldn't be picking Polynesian. So if I'm going to pick monorail, it would be Grand Floridian or Bay Lake. But I can see the virtue in picking Riviera for this type of trip. So just talking about, when we're talking about adults only trip, I did bring up romance and romantic. For a lot of people, when they take their adults only trip, they're going as a couple. So let's just talk about a little bit about that. If you were going and wanting to have like a nice couples trip, how does that look and how does the trip change? Scott just sat up for this. I mean, I'm almost afraid about what's going to come out of Scott's mouth right now, but
I'm dying to hear from Scott and his Snuggie.
He's probably talking about him and Phil.
No.
And their date at Chef Mickey's and their robes.
Yeah. We start with a romantic dinner for 2 at Chef Mickey's. Ending the night at the Grand Floridian in our plush robes.
You're talking my language. Let's hear it. Come on, keep going.
What's wrong? Nobody said Animal Kingdom. I mean, isn't that like kind of theming and adult? And I mean, I get that kids would like to see that too, but
I definitely think it could be.
I'm not sure that it screams romance. But
No, but it,
Depends on your view of the animals and what they're doing in the evening.
I mean, they do say have a wild time, but
I mean, Sanaa and Jico, those are nice places to go, like on a couple's trip.
There is some fantastic dining there.
yeah.
Well, Kathleen did say on the last episode that when she's feeling frisky, she likes to go to Splitsville. So
We've never been to Splitsville.
I have.
Oh.
Lily and I have.
Wait a
I
minute,
was
she
on-
invited me. Never mind.
Me and Lily were there. I don't know where you were, but I don't know. I mean, I can see why you would say that about Animal Kingdom Lodge, but me, it's probably going to be Grand Floridian, and that's because of all the dining. I really enjoy the pools at Grand Floridian. They also have a spa. I just don't think it could be beat.
Yeah, I think everything at Grand Floridian,
Mhm.
if you want to plan a romantic day from beginning to end, you could do a couples massage.
Mhm.
The dining is probably unmatched. If you want to have a nice dinner at Citrico's, Narcoossee's, a nightcap at Enchanted Rose,
hop on
watch
the
fun.
monorail to go to California Grill.
No, I know where Scott's going
Wow.
with this, and I was going to say the same thing. It is more adult oriented than Polynesian. I will definitely give you that. And you're right. And you don't even need to do Victoria and Albert's. You could go
No.
to Citrico's. You could go to Narcoossee's. Emily and I had a
Mhm.
fantastic romantic meal at Narcoossee's on our last adults trip. And then you've got the fireworks overhead, either from the pool or the beach. And it's not quite as crowded as Polynesian because, again, people tend to be a little scared away from Grand Floridian and just the
Mhm.
the ambiance or the feeling they think that it has, which has not been our experience. But I think you're absolutely right. In being able to have the spa right on site, without a doubt, leads to, I think, a much more romantic or intimate couples experience.
I can
So what if
see
you go ahead, Kathleen?
I was gonna say I can see like how you had mentioned about Riviera. I could definitely see that for some people. I mean, I'm not one of those people, only because I don't like the pools there at all, and there's only one dining option for us. I don't know. I just it's definitely elegant and it's pretty and
It's adult themed,
it
but
is
still,
adult
it
themed.
is
So I
very
could see
adult
that,
themed.
but I would rather go somewhere else, but I can see how some people would love that. Mm.
I think that in some ways, and I think in our next episode, we're going to do a deep dive into Wilderness Lodge. So I won't go too deep into it in this episode. Wilderness Lodge has such potential to be a nice kind of couples getaway, except for the dining.
Mhm.
They do have, Territory Lounge is great and Geyser Point is great, but in terms of actual restaurants, that hurts it. So yeah, I mean, honestly, I would give Bay Lake Tower a nod here too, because while the
California girl.
rooms while the rooms are the studios are on the smaller side, you can have a view of the fireworks from there. You've got a beautiful view of Bay Lake. You've got two sit down restaurants that are, I think, everyone knows how I feel about California Grill. I think Steakhouse 71 is solid for just if you wanted to, have a meal, but I think that the lounge is a really nice place to sit down and get a drink if you wanted to. So I give Bay Lake Tower a little bit of a nod here too for an adults only romantic type of trip. As much as I love this is hard because I agree that Crescent Lake is where I'd want to be because of the access to Epcot for what we were saying before, but Beach Club it's like a family resort to me. Beach Club and Boardwalk have a family feel. I mean, they all do because we're in Disney World, but just theming wise, it's very family feeling. Whereas I feel like Grand Floridian, Bay Lake Tower, Riviera, and Wilderness Lodge do have a little bit of an adult kind of vibe to it because of the type of theming that it is. But I wanted to ask you guys, so Phil and Scott, if you were going to be planning a trip with your guy friends, where would you want to stay?
Good question.
Fort Wilderness.
I was just going to say nobody has brought up Fort Wilderness yet.
We're gonna be roughing it in the wilderness.
Is that your real answer or are you being sarcastic?
I think it would be fun. I don't see a guy's trip. Oh wow, Phil.
Guys only, I'm probably going to go back to Boardwalk just because there's plenty of entertainment out by the Boardwalk. There's plenty to see. Or I think Saratoga comes up pretty highly again because you've got plenty to do there. That is the golf resort to some extent. There's a lot of guys hanging around. I think that is where their kind of lackluster lounge becomes a little more fun with all the guys, and you've got access to Disney Springs where you could just go from place to place to place. So I think it would probably be between those two,
Tree Fort.
as long as I get my Red Ryder BB gun.
You got it, and the hat.
Where would you pick, Amy, for an all girls trip?
So I've done a couple of all girls trips, and I think that it probably would be Boardwalk or Beach Club because I want the proximity to Epcot and I want the proximity to Jelly Rolls and to kimonos for karaoke at night because, nightlife becomes more of a thing when I'm there with my girlfriends. So definitely Crescent Lake is probably where I would pick. Although I would not be mad about staying at Grand Floridian.
I can't believe I'm going to say this, and I'm probably going to edit it out afterwards because I can't believe these words are escaping my mouth. I feel
Oh boy.
dirty. But I think Scott's first answer may actually work. Hanging out with guys, grilling, picnic table, sitting around a campfire, and just being absolute buffoons in golf carts, tearing all around Fort Wilderness. I'm not going to lie, that actually sounds like a blast.
I can see that.
I'm sold.
Can you imagine Scott and I with a couple of goobers just tearing around Fort Wilderness, just half messed up in a golf cart? God, that sounds like fun.
It's not a bad answer. Definitely not a bad answer. I mean, I don't know that I don't think that I would do that for a girls' trip because I just don't know that many of my girlfriends would appreciate Fort Wilderness the way that I do. I think that we would probably go with Grand Floridian or Boardwalk or Beach Club.
I agree. That's probably what I would go with.
I suddenly want to go to Fort Wilderness with Scott. Oh my God, what has happened to my life?
This is amazing, and I knew the day was finally going to come. There was going to be something. There was going to be something that was going to make you come over to the Fort Wilderness dark side with us, and it has happened right here.
Who am I even?
So
wait, maybe you're choosing fun. That's it.
Yeah.
Choosing fun.
I think for all the reasons I didn't love Fort Wilderness for a family trip, it sounds like an absolute hoot with a bunch of guys just acting like tools.
Listen, we told you, I mean, this wasn't a guys only trip, but it was adults. Sitting in the cabin playing Cards Against Humanity was tons of fun. And it was just like a small glimmer into what an adults only trip at Fort Wilderness could be like.
First Chef Mickey's, now Fort Wilderness.
I know.
What's next?
I got to be honest. I think that's the perfect place to leave off on this episode because we can't get any crazier than what I just said.
I'm not going to lie. I have those images in my head. Like we're just tooling around Fort Wilderness.
So that's probably going to be a
being
stay
goofy
coming up.
In the golf carts. We're hand in hand skipping down the road, playing tetherball. You know?
Yeah, you know what? Sign me up. The hell with it.
Hanging out at Hoop-de-Doo, scraping our little things that they got there. I don't know what they're called, but definitely.
Look, all guys are just 14 years old in some measure. Amy said it earlier, you know, when she became an adult and I started laughing, I'm like, when does that happen? Because I haven't grown up yet. But a bunch of guys would immediately become a bunch of 16-year-old knuckleheads hanging around Fort Wilderness for a few days. It's inevitable.
Yeah.
Well,
that sounds fun.
We just did the Lord's work here, and we converted Phil. So I agree. We need to end the episode here before he changes his mind.
I'm not changing my mind. I'm ashamed of myself. I can't believe I just said that.
We're proud of you.
Wow.
We knew that you had it in you.
Oh, I didn't. I'm glad someone did. All right, guys. Well, on that momentous note, we're going to bring this one to a close. If you could do us a favor, head on over to Apple Podcast. Give us a like, a 5-star review. Amy?
And please subscribe to our YouTube channel at DVC Clubhouse. Join the Facebook group. Follow us on TikTok and Instagram. And until next time, we'll DVC you real soon.
Bye, guys.
Bye, guys.
See you guys.
And so our journey comes to an end.
Oh, no, please, can't we go back to page 1 and do it all over again?
Started this thing together, and that's how we'll finish it.
Because that, my friends, is where the magic lives.
Top of the earth.